The task I was given was to kind of sum up the day, and that's been a bit of a challenge really, because of the quality and depth of content we've heard today. But I kind of came across this quote, which I thought kind of sums up in many ways the range and depth and breadth of challenges we've had. And it's from Mahatma Gandhi, who said, "Your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny." And one of the observations I'd say today is the number of times we've heard around things like a change of thinking, doing different actions, changing habits, have all been fairly influential in terms of things that we've heard today. So some thoughts and reflections from me, really. All of us involved in food and drink, what we're doing is important because it influences and impacts on everybody. Food and drink and our relationship with it is complex and complicated, and for consumers, too often it's unclear. The language, what we say and how we say it is important, and we heard this morning from the keynote from Sir Kenneth Cowman around the importance of positive language. And it struck me in terms of positive language how I've used this phrase a number of times around 40% obesity by 2030, and how you could swing that round and say 60% of us with healthy weight by the same time frame, and whether that would actually encourage a different focus and a different change in attitude. Fundamentally, science and evidence is important to what we do. It must inform our decisions, and importantly, it helps us gain consumer trust. But as we heard in the last session from Erin, it's not the only thing that influences consumer choice, consumer decisions, and consumer behaviours. Which leads to the next point, really, which is around attitude and underpinning beliefs, and how they're fundamental to affecting change. And I think Alistair kind of highlighted quite clearly, really, the gap between what people think needs to happen and then their self-perception of where they are, and that kind of paradigm shift. So we have a position where lots of people think something needs to be done, but actually they don't need to do anything because actually it doesn't affect them. And I think fundamentally it's what today has shown is the importance of tackling the belief system and the values if we want to affect change. The issues that we face are inclusive, and they impact on everybody in Scotland, regardless of socioeconomic groups. The issues around environment, lifestyle, none of those can be ignored. All of them have to be addressed. And that brings a significant degree of challenge to what we're doing. In the current context as well, Brexit is clearly heightening consumer concerns across the breadth of what we cover: price, safety, availability, fraud, sustainability, the environment have all become elevated. So trying to affect change within that environment is going to be increasingly challenging. For us as a regulator, transparency is key. We won't change beliefs and values and actions if we aren't open and transparent. And certainly in the sessions we heard today from Lena, and going back to that quote, if words become actions, then actually providing information for consumers to make positive decisions is actually essential in terms of affecting change. Relationships are really important, and we've heard today from a breadth of speakers covering industry, consumers, the third sector, government, academia. All of us have a vital role to play and can contribute to fresh thinking and how we shift the current paradigm. And then from Alison Testone, we heard the point about leadership can be individual. It's about the individual decisions we make that shape and influence. And her example about not attending conferences where there's a kind of poor offer of lunch, which is quite an interesting idea. But it underpins the point that individual decisions can shape and influence, and that's worth thinking about, because ultimately a lot of change is only going to be coming about if individual consumers and individuals decide to make individual decisions around what they're going to do to change their habits. And then there's a lot of decisions reflect choice, and Malcolm's comment was particularly pertinent around healthy choices don't have to be more expensive. And underlying a lot of the theme today was actually the issue around cost and lifestyle, affordability. All of those are issues, and they're fundamentally important to all of us. And as has been shown, it doesn't matter around the level of income, the impact is still there. The degree of impact is more on poorest people, but actually the expense issue cannot be avoided. And then this afternoon we also learnt around the balance between dealing with uncertainty and certainty, and how that influences and shapes decisions, not just of us, but also of consumers. The more uncertainty there is, the greater the precautionary approach that will be taken. And risk assessment then becomes essential because it shapes and informs risk management, not just as us as organisations, but actually individuals, and how they manage what they perceive to be the risks. And then finally, I think the other thing is about being reasonable, being realistic, and thinking about solutions that need to be dynamic. And that, I think, is definitely a challenge. But I think actually what we've heard today is there's certainly the will to be there to do that. So finally, a few thanks from me. I'd like to thank the National Museum staff for their hospitality today and the excellent organisation and lunch. I'd like to thank Speakeasy, who have provided all the technical support. I'd like to thank my own comms team, in particular Sophie and Alex, who have borne the brunt of the organisation of this conference, so well done to them and to all of the comm team. And finally, and especially, thank you to the speakers who, without their brilliant contribution, this conference wouldn't have been possible. And I'll leave you with one final thought from Virginia Woolf. One cannot think well, love well, sleep well, if one has not dined well. Dining well is our challenge, whether it's food safety, authenticity, or diet. Dining well in Scotland is the challenge we face, and it's important that everyone in Scotland can do just that. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you've enjoyed the day. Thank you very much.